Okay friends, to do this job, you're gonna have to lower your spare tire. So make your way into the back seat and you're gonna go ahead and find these tools. You need the tire iron, which has this adapter piece right here. You're also gonna need the rod that has the hook at the end. Let's go ahead and take that and we're gonna put it right in the center hole, located underneath the Ford emblem on your tailgate. Slide that end right in there until it stops. You should feel it want to sit right in. Now we'll put the squared end onto the piece here. And now we're going to turn this counterclockwise and start lowering our spare tire. Once you have it lowered down to the ground, you're going to want to go ahead and follow that cable that's coming from the vehicle down to the spare tire. You're going to have to break the adapter free. Typically it's going to be stuck in there. Just go ahead and give it a loving bonk with a hammer. Now I'm going to reach inside. I'm going to have to flip this up sideways and pull it on out of here. There. So this is essentially how I put it up, and then I pulled it up and through the center. When it's in the wheel, it's sitting just like this. Now at this point, I wanted to explain something. If you're doing this in the driveway, not on a lift, you can carefully leave the rear wheels on the ground. You're going to slide a jack underneath the frame in front of the rear wheels. Essentially, all we want to do is gently support the frame so it's sitting in the proper position. If you're going to be doing this on a lift, you can go ahead and get this safely up and off the ground and apply some support underneath the rear differential. Now, since I'm doing this on the lift, I have it raised by the frame and I'm going to support the rear differential. Now let's continue on to our 21mm mounting nuts. Now this mounting nut down here is holding a bolt that holds the leaf spring to the shackle. We'll go ahead and remove this nut, but leave the bolt in. Then we'll continue up to the top. Always inspect your mounting hardware as you remove it. Replace it as needed. Next, we can continue on with a hammer and a punch. We're going to try driving each of these bolts out. I'm going to start with the top one, but I wanted to show you it is common for the bolts to be frozen. And if that's the case, make sure you spray them with some penetrant. And then, of course, you're going to want to make sure you put something on it to protect the threads, such as maybe the original nut that you went ahead and removed. You can just go ahead and start it on there a couple threads and give it a couple loving bonks to break it free. If you find that you're having an issue with the lower bolt, it's typically because it's frozen in the bushing that's inside of the leaf spring, right in here. You'll notice with the shackle, it came with a brand new bushing that we're going to be replacing, but we do have to get the bolt out of the center. So with that said, to gain access to this so I can drive it out, I'm going to go ahead and lower this down a little bit further. But to do that, I'm going to have to move along to my lower shock mount. To remove this, I'm going to use a 15mm headed wrench to hold the bolt from the forward side. Use an 18mm to remove the nut, and then of course drive the bolt right on out of here. Now let's move along to starting to remove the sway bar link. We're going to move right up along this area and remove the 18mm headed bolt that holds the sway bar link to the frame. Inspect that hardware, set it aside. At this point, you either need to lower the rear differential or raise the frame of the vehicle so you can start bringing this down to a clear working point. At this point, you also want to be very careful not to damage the nut, in which case you wouldn't be able to get a socket on there. I'm going to use my air chisel with a specialty bit on it and the proper socket, 21 millimeter. At this point, I can pull my bolt out. I'm going to make sure I'm holding onto the shackle so it can't fall and potentially hurt me. Obviously, for this bolt, it's extremely rusted. I'm going to take it to the wire wheel and give it a thorough inspection before my installation. Let's grab that shackle out of there. The next thing we need to do is start pressing the bushing out of our rear leaf spring. Now to do this, it's going to be easiest using a ball joint press. It looks just like this. We want to make sure that we have an area that's large enough for the bushing to fit out and through. On the other side, you want to have something that's going to be able to drive it through this area. So with that said, I've got this set up. I'm going to start pressing it through, and you'll see it come out this end. Now that we have that out of there, we need to give this area a thorough inspection, especially the inner aspect where the bushing is supposed to press into. Make sure it doesn't look rotted or damaged in any way. After that, go ahead and clean it out with a board brush of some sort. Now we can get ready to install our brand new bushing. To do this, when you're putting it in, you want to make sure you have something that fits just along the outer ring here. You don't want to try to press it in through the center because all you're going to do is ruin the rubber bushing in between. A 24 millimeter socket fits perfectly. Now we're going to start pressing this through the leaf spring. You want to make sure that the bushing lines up perfectly with the leaf spring itself. You don't want to have it protruding too far in one direction or the other. Perfect. Now we can get ready to install our shackle. You'll notice that I have the top bolt already out. Now for that top bolt, I went ahead and I left the inboard washer on it. Let's take this and put it in place on the frame. I'm going to line up my bolt holes. I'll take the bolt with one of my washers and put it right on through the hole. Now on the other side, we're going to take one of our washers that came with it, slide it right on there as well, and then our mounting nut. Now I'll fully remove my lower bolt. And now at this point, you're going to either have to raise or lower the rear differential or body of the vehicle until it lines up. Go ahead and take that lower mounting bolt with one of your washers directly on the bolt. Slide it through from the inside out. Washer, mounting nut. Before you go ahead and tighten any of these, you're going to want to make sure that you have the entire weight of the vehicle down on the ground. Essentially, that's going to put this in the general ride height position. At that point, you'd want to go ahead and tighten these. With it up in the air, if it's on a lift, you can just go ahead and use a jack underneath the differential and gently lift it up to that position. Just be very careful not to knock it off of the lift. Let's use a 22 millimeter to tighten these. Let's torque each of these to 100 foot-pounds. We're going to continue on to the upper sway bar link bolt. You want to take that with the washer on it and go ahead and slide it right on through the sway bar link and into the frame. Start it in by hand, and then we can continue on by snugging everything up. Let's go ahead and snug that upper bolt. Now we can torque this to 18 foot-pounds. Now if you're doing the shackles as a pair, now's a perfect time to go ahead and pause and do the exact same thing on the other side of the vehicle. After that, we can continue on by lowering the rear differential. Now we can resecure our lower shock. We'll just take this. Generally, you can compress it a little bit and line it up. Once it's in position, go ahead and put the bolt through from the front to the rear. Now we can put this nut on here, we'll bottom it out and then torque it to 46 foot-pounds. All right, we're at the point where you can lower the vehicle and get ready to reinstall your spare tire. Go ahead and take the apparatus and slide it right through the center. All right, let's go ahead and start jacking it up into its proper position. All right, so I cranked it up until this ended up stopping. The next thing that you want to do is double check to make sure it's completely secured. You don't want to be driving with this bouncing around. It could break free and then bounce down the road while you're driving. Oh yeah, that's nice and tight.